in 3, 2, 1, going
All right,
live.
here we are again, Don. You know, another
Right on,
episode
yeah,
of
I'm
HB
stoked.
Unplugged. This
Heck
thing's
yes.
turned out to be kind of cool.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people are
It's
coming up to us.
I
And,
look forward to it.
yeah,
believe me.
everybody's coming up and saying, hey, man, that's a good thing you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And, well, we got a great guest today. We got
Yeah.
Pete Townend.
Peter
Yeah,
Townend.
this is going to be pretty awesome. Let's give him a big hand and bring him in appropriately. Look at the crowd.
Look at that crowd out there. Oh, my God.
No, well, we got a whole bunch of people here
Well,
to
no,
see.
you know, so when we first started this, you asked me, you knew that I knew a lot of people. And I just want to share this because I thought about it on the way here. When I first met PT, like, I was so stoked because here, growing up here and in the early 70s, I'd come home on leave and, you know, it was a word out that there were these Australians in town. And
Yeah.
we would go, who are these
The
guys?
Bronze Aussies.
Yeah, the Bronze Aussies. And then, of course, now finding out who they were, and it was these guys, you know, and Ian Cairns and was it
Mark Warren,
Yeah, and
originally.
yeah, was Rabbit Bartholomew one of them?
No, and then later on, when we opened the Bronze Aussies Surf Centre in '79 on Main Street, there was also then Jimmy Banks and Shane Aran.
Oh, okay, yeah, Shane.
And that was in the 70s.
Yeah,
was-
I
79.
I have some cool questions. I have some cool things I want to talk about because, you know, what a name you've made for yourself, PT. And it really, it's
oh,
kind of,
yeah, he's all over the map. When it comes to surfing, PT's the guy for sure. Yeah,
I'm one of them. I'm not
Well,
that guy.
He's
yeah, well, you're pretty, after reading
Yeah.
about it, you're pretty instrumental. You
Yeah.
know, it's funny because PT, what Don and I, you know, when I ran this idea by him, you know, it's all, in even getting Rick Brown involved. Rick, by the way, everyone, Rick Brown is sitting over there, and he's been on our episode already, and he wanted to be a fly on the wall and see what this episode was going to be like. But when I talked to Don, I was talking to him about this podcast show. I podcasted for quite a few years, and I thought, what a great idea to have a podcast for Huntington Beach. There's a couple of people that do them with their cell phones and things like that, but I wanted something really professional. And what we're trying to, you know, accomplish here is like create a hub. You know, a real solid hub where people can get great information, learn about the people that are here, the leaders, you know, find out more about HB whenever things are going on. And we've really done a good job of capitalizing on that. That's, I think what we're seeing is, you know, a following of people coming and going, wow, you know, especially when it comes to events that we can announce on the show and tell people, you know, what we've got going and what's happening in Huntington Beach, and that's a key role for you. And you know, I've got questions here.
Well, let me
even
let
talking.
me get my question
Okay,
out of the way. and
Okay,
then
wait.
we'll
Hold on.
let you take
Hold
the
on.
lead.
I
Go
gotta
ahead.
tell you this one story. So hold that thought.
Go ahead.
So the other day, we're at the event for
Beechwood or
no, the other one, McKenna
Volkswagen. Yeah.
And I'm sitting here talking to PT and Rick. We're sitting there shooting the shit, and I was telling him about the episode we did with Duke.
Oh yeah,
You know,
Duke
IPA.
yeah.
So here we are. I'm going on and on about, oh, Ben did this and Ben did that. When Ben was telling us this, and all of a sudden, Rick said something first, and then PT looks at me and goes, like with his funniest look ever. So you and Don were able to bring Ben back alive for an episode?
Because you got Duke IPA.
Yeah, I got it. It was like, but you know, my growing up in my head, it wasn't ever Duke, it was Ben, because, you know, growing up a surfer, he was one of those posters on the wall.
Okay,
Go ahead, Don.
so,
What was your...
my question to PT, and I would have a lot of questions, but we talk. We're on a couple board of directors together and stuff.
You guys are on all
But-
the boards.
So the arch that he's famous for, and when, you know, he's got his hand thrown back like that, and I've done a couple arches. I was telling actually Rick on the phone, I didn't do them purposely though. Sometimes when you're dropping on a big wave, and as soon as you turn and the bottom, it throws you.
Yeah,
back
you're
like
leaning
that.
back. You're
And
leaning back.
I did a couple on a buddy of mine. Goes, wow, did you just do an arch? And I go, believe me, it wasn't planned. Whereas you see PT do an arch in some of the videos that he has, and it's unreal how he's got it perfected.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of the things that I really admired about you, is the being able to do that and do it during contests. And
Well, what's
mean,
the question out of that?
well, how did that come about? You being
So,
able to do the arch
there
like
was
you
this
were.
photo of Kemp Arberg from the either late 50s, early 60s that became the Surfer magazine logo. And, you know, like, so I started in the longboard era, but we came out of that pretty quick. You know, like by the end of the 60s, we were shortboarding.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
and
70s.
and I just grew up with style, because when I started, style mattered. I mean, having a good style made you a good surfer, and so style was really important, particularly in the area that I grew up in Australia, where we had these beautiful right-hand points, and so you didn't have the short choppiness of surfing beach breaks. You were going to ride a wave for a long time, so you did it with style. And I also, through my parents, had this incredible influence of music and dancing and stuff from the Fred Astaire period. And I went, I'd like to dance on my surfboard like Fred Astaire. so those two things, when we got to the 70s, I started doing the soul arch. And there's two different versions of the soul arch. There's the static soul arch, where you just raise your hands above your head in a trim, right?
Yeah.
Like
And
a
you're
trim.
just kind of leaning back. Yeah.
But then I said, I think I can do that as a turn.
Yeah,
And
like you turn off the bottom.
And so I started to actually do it as a turn. And I got really good at doing it as a turn, where I'd bury the rail. I mean, there's, great images of me doing it at sunset, like in Big Surf and in Big Wednesday. And so it became a thing. I mean, all the photographers would just wait for me to do a soul arch so they could get the photo, right?
Well, it looked like it would help you with the rail and just come off the bottom turn and come right up the face of the wave really nice.
Yes and no, because the problem is, as you arch your back like that and you put the rail, the consequences if you eat it aren't good.
Yeah.
The nose flies
especially
up
on a
and hits
big
you in
day.
the face.
Yeah.
You know,
Especially on a big day like that.
Well, particularly if you've got your back arched like that and it hits you, you can get hurt. But it became a famous thing. That one particular image with the hands both above my head, well, that's a static one. I'm not doing the turn, but that's like the most famous photo period of me. You see it in hotels all over Australia. It was the cover of Tracks magazine. It was on my Australian Surfing Hall of Fame induction trophy. I mean, just on this trip I was just in Australia, I stopped at a place called Crescent Head, which is a famous surfing spot with one pub out there, and they have it blown up on the thing, and the new owner got me to stop by and sign it for back up on the wall.
Oh, wow.
And so that's the most famous image that of my whole career, is that one with the arms above my head, and it's ironically taken right in front of the Coolangatta Surf Club. And a place that people don't even think is a surf spot. Because before we had the Superbank, you used to have the distinct breaks between Snapper, Greenmount, and Kira, and there was what's called the Kira groin or breakwater. And on small swells, if the sand's right, there's this little right-hander that comes into the groin and doesn't get a wrap around the corner. And there was this one day, and it was really clean, and Marty Tullemans, the late Marty Tullemans, set up, unintentionally, I didn't know he's there, and he set up on the groin, on the breakwater with his camera, and I did that, and became, the most famous photograph that exists of me today.
Unreal, because years later, I mean, from in the 60s and in the 70s, you see guys walking up to the nose, and then they do that, what do you call it, the static arch?
Yeah, the
where you just
static.
stand up and just lean back. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the style. It was really, longboarding was all about the style. That's what I learned from my brothers. So let's back up. So let's talk a little bit about, you growing up, obviously born in Queensland, and surfing career started back in the mid 60s.
That's right.
How old were you in 65? And that's when you started.
So I got my first surfboard mid-60s when I was 15. I had to, my parents, my dad particularly, was a beach person, wasn't a surfer, he was a clubby, surf life-saving, on the beaches. And there was this thing in those days, a tradition, you went into the clubbies and you went to get what you call a bronze medallion, which made you a qualified lifesaver. And so my dad said, you can't have a surfboard until you're a qualified lifesaver.
Wow.
So I got that, and I got that. Still have the medallion. You get a bronze medallion from the government that tells you that you're a qualified lifesaver. And so...
Is that similar to a lifeguard here in the States?
Yeah. But
okay.
it's all volunteer in Australia, remember? There's no...
no money.
Right. Yeah. Well, the cool thing is it's pretty cool because if you're a member of one club, they have all those clubs on the beach all around the country, and they're government supported. And if you are a member and a qualified lifesaver one, you can go to any club in the whole country and get accommodation for free.
Oh, wow. That's pretty awesome. Now, watch this. Now, for people out there watching, surfers will, see their heroes in the water, watch them on the movies, look at them in the magazines, and they'll surf their life, their entire life, and not accomplish, great things. They just become a surfer, and it's just their lifestyle. But they do try. And what's amazing is you started surfing in '65. 5 years later, you started creating a huge brand for yourself. I mean, all through the '70s, your name, your brand, everything exploded. Talk about that a little bit. I mean, a guy will surf. I became a surfing photographer, and I got some shots in the magazine. But I never accomplished something like in 5 years of surfing. All of a sudden in the '70s, you exploded. I mean, literally, your career took off.
Yeah, well, I was coming up in Australia, particularly 1970, which is when I got my first pink surfboard and became the trademark.
Yeah, that is one of the questions. Yeah,
I got second in the Queensland Junior Championships. It was like second in California, and
so this is like 6 years later.
Yeah, 1970,
Yeah.
And so now I got in the Australian titles, and I made the top 10. And the very next year, I was in the juniors with Simon Anderson, if you can believe that. And Simon won the national title at Bells, and I got second. And now they were selecting the Australian team for the next old school ISA World Championships, which were in San Diego. And I got second the next year in the men's division to Michael Peterson. And so because I'd got second both years, they did the combined years, and I was the number one seed for the Australian team. And we came to San Diego, and I made the final and got the bronze. And the interesting, who else was in the final? Jimmy Blears from Hawaii won, but Nuiva was second.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was third, and then Larry Bertelman and Michael Ho. That was the final. And then when it really exploded, so because I got third, George Downing nominated me to be in the Duke Hawaiian Surf Classic on ABC Wide World of Sports, and I went to Hawaii, and I was just an alternate, and a couple of guys didn't show up, and I got in, and I went to the finals of the first Duke that I was in, and all of a sudden I was on ABC Wide World of Sports, and all of a sudden now I was an
Wow, what a trip!
International guy, and that changed everything, and now. It led me to be invited to the Duke because they invited you to the Duke based on your ability to surf sunset. And so I got in because I got third in that world contest in San Diego and got in the final, finished fourth. And from then on, it's one of the things that I'm most proud of in my career. I was invited for 11 straight years to be in the top 24 in the world in that contest.
Wow.
It's like how they revere now the invite to the Eddie. Mm-hmm. That was our version of the Eddie, right? Only 24 invitations based on your ability to surf sunset. I never won it, but I made the final 6 times.
So, there's some other things that I wanted to cover really quick. And, it's, not only did your career skyrocket in the '70s for yourself personally, but a lot of people don't know how instrumental you were in the '70s and going into the '80s in creating the surf industry.
Not so much the industry at first, but
the culture,
the professional side of surfing. We had a belief around the middle of the '70s, a group of us, the South Africans and the Australians, that there was professional surfing in front of us. We wanted to be professionals.
Nobody knew; it just didn't exist.
Didn't really exist. We had what we called the Gypsy Tour. We just went around the world and tried to make it as far as we can and win as much prize money as you could, which wasn't very much in those days, enough to try and get to the next one. And if you didn't win, you borrowed the rest from your mate and you paid him back when you won more. And that's how it was. It was the Gypsy Tour. And on the Gypsy Tour, you had the Gunston in South Africa. You had Hawaii, you had the events. You had the Duke and the Smirnoff. And in Australia, we had Bells and what was known as the Coke contest in Sydney, which at that time was the world's biggest professional surf contest.
Right, yeah.
Coca-Cola Classic in Narrabeen. Yeah, and then in Australia, we formed the Australian Professional Surfers Association in 1975, and Ian Cairns and I, because we were Formula One fans, we dreamed up a way to make the ratings. And we actually made a set of ratings based on the Gypsy Tour. And we sent it out to a couple of guys, and that got published. And all of a sudden, there was ratings. And Fred in Hawaii was trying to do the IPS at that point based on... Yeah, trying to do it based on prize money, though, which wasn't fair because the Smirnoff contest was the only contest in the world with $5,000 first prize.
That was
so
big,
if you won that,
big
you
bucks.
were right.
Yeah.
And so we were doing the thing with the points, just like Formula One motor racing. And in South Africa, that year at the Gunston, Randy Rarick was there, which was helping Fred the whole thing. And Randy talked to us about what we were doing in Australia, and he took that whole ratings idea back to Fred, and that's how the tour was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and then what year did you end up winning the world title?
That year. So
You were the first world
right.
champion surfer.
Yeah, so
First world champion surfer.
76 at that Gunston, Randy went back to Fred and said, these guys have got a good idea of how to do it. And Fred retroactively sent out a letter to all of us saying, we're going to announce a world champion this year, retroactively. We're going to go back and get the events from the Gypsy Tour, right? And we're going to add Hawaii. And there were 4 events in Hawaii that year. And we're going to declare a champion. Well, it just happened that I had an incredible season in Hawaii that winter. I was in all 4 tournaments and made 3 of the finals.
Was the Pipe Masters one of them?
I missed the Pipe Masters final by 1. I was 7th, semi-final.
Oh, okay.
The other one was the World Cup at Haleiwa. I got 2nd. A Duke contest, which I got 5th, I think. And then
Was that on the North Shore?
all of them on the
Yeah,
North
all
Shore.
North Shore, yeah.
Okay.
2 of them at Sunset, and I made both finals at Sunset. And Smirnoff, and I made that final too. Wow. And so if they had had a triple crown, it would have been a 4-pull crown, not a triple crown. There were 4 events. But I would have been the triple crown champ as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and
I mean, think about this. What PT has done, you're talking about start surfing at 15 years old, and not even 10 years later, you're instrumental in creating a global brand of professional surfers.
And Mel, can you believe it? It's only a year away. It'll be the 50th anniversary of the formation of pro surfing as we know it today.
Unreal.
Which is crazy when you think about that.
We should publicize that.
Well, no, it's going to be, WSL's already formed a committee for that because, just like if you guys remember, when NFL celebrated 50 years, it was a huge
Oh, my God, it was
thing.
massive, yeah.
Well, it's going to be a huge thing for pro surfing. I mean, because 50th anniversary, now other people in the world go, wow, surfing professionally has been around 50 years. A lot of people just don't realize that, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, just when you think of the professional side.
Well, the surf crew too, but mainstream doesn't realize that.
Yeah.
We had professional surfing here starting in 1959, but it was on a different level than what he's talking about. It was
but it was
just
just trophies and free gear.
Yeah. I mean, Duke Kahanamoku was the big name there because he was the guy giving out the trophies. And real quick, as a kid, walking on the pier with my dad and then a couple times with my brother, you could see Duke Kahanamoku would be on the pier checking out the Western Surf Contest.
With Johnny Weissmuller.
And no one went up there and said, hey, can we get your picture? And it was nothing. In fact, my buddy and I are walking the pier, and he looks at me and goes, you know who that is? And I go, no. He goes, that's Duke Kahanamoku. And I go, who's that? I mean, I had no idea.
Right.
And so things were different back then. And then when it matured, like he's talking about right now, it really took off. I remember thinking.
I shared this story on another episode where I fitted hot-coated boards for Tom Everly. And he had the license for Lightning Bolt.
Yes, he did.
And one of the coolest things for me, I was a kid. I was, finning hot coating boards, you get brain damage really fast if you're not carrying. But anyways, I remember all of these guys, my heroes that were in the magazine and stuff, walking in that building, and Mark Richards, Ben Ipa, Jerry Lopez, Roy Russell. I mean, all these guys would walk in the door, and I was I was starstruck, like you were saying, Don. Like, I didn't know a lot. All I know is these guys were in magazines, that I would look at or watch at the, 5 Summer Story, whatever movie was coming out that year. You watch these guys surf, and PT was one of them. You never walked into that shop, but you know, it's interesting how you share these stories because, you know, your career got to the point where you were so well respected that people really looked up, even the pros looked up to you, and you started coaching, right?
Later on, after I finished, in '76 I was declared that first world champ, and then I left the tour, which freaked everybody out, to do Big Wednesday. I spent the next year in '77. I did some events, but I dropped from like first to 14th, I think it was, because I wasn't in all the events. And in those days, all the events counted. Today, they take a percentage of the events for your final tally for the year. And then after Big Wednesday, I came back to the tour and I finished number 5 in the world the next 2 years. And then that was 1979. I was in the final of the last event of the year against MR. Mark Richards wins his first world title, beating me at Haleiwa. And then the next year, my daughter's born. I'm at the hospital in Fountain Valley, and I'm supposed to be at Bell's, and she's born, and I left after she's born, got on the plane, went to Australia, went to Bell's, got beaten the first heat, stayed there and went up to Coke contest in Sydney, got beaten the first heat, and I went, I think I'm done with this. And I came back to California and decided, that I would start to figure out what was going to be the rest of my life, because I was number 5 in the world. I'd won the world championship. I didn't see myself going to be a contender in the 80s at that level. And so I did regional events, like I got second in the Caton. I won the La Jolla Shores Open in '81. And I was still doing the Duke. I was in the final of the Duke in '82, but my focus was changing. Ian Cairns and I formed a company called Sports and Media Services, which office was just down the street here, unit number C down on the other side of the street. And we got the contract to be the executive directors of the NSSA.
Oh, wow.
And that began the whole sports marketing. We all of a sudden started the Body Glove Winter Grand Prix, the Hang 10 Summer Grand Prix, and then Kangaroo talked OP into the first OP Pro. And that was the big event that our company did. And OP Pro, the very first one, people don't realize how influential that was. It was the first event rated on the tour, period. There wasn't any others at that time.
Here in Huntington.
From California. There were a couple of events on the East Coast going on already, but we didn't have a rated event here. And so the OP Pro, and it's the first time that ever the priority rule was used, which I wrote the rule, and we had a buoy. You had to paddle around the buoy to get priority, not like where they allocate it today. And the other thing, which is funnier than hell, we had instant scoring. And the instant scoring was Meg Bernardo, who was our first employee straight out of high school, in that office down the street. The judges would write the score down, and she would run up to the second story, grab those scores, run down, and put them on a big board so the announcers could announce what the scores were. There was no
computers.
There was no computer.
Yeah, no high tech.
It was all manual, but that was the first time that stuff ever got used.
Unreal. The story is just incredible. And then you ended up in Huntington Beach. I mean, why'd you choose Huntington Beach as your house?
I married a girl from Fountain Valley.
Ah.
I think she thought we were going to live in Australia, but it didn't work out that way. And so I got here permanently in Huntington. I hooked up with her on the North Shore the year I win the World Championship, and she went with me on the whole Big Wednesday thing the next year. And then we got married in '79, and Rana came along. And I've been here now ever since. I've been in Huntington for 45 years.
And inducted into the Huntington Beach Walk Fame.
Yep.
In 2001.
Surfers Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Surfers Hall of Fame.
Walk of
And the Walk of Fame.
Yes.
Wow.
And then so not long after that, Bob McNona was publisher of Surfing Magazine. He lured me away in '84 after I coached the U.S. team to win the gold medal at Huntington Beach. We won the ISA gold medal with Scott Farnsworth and Janice Aragon. They got the gold medals, and the U.S. team won the gold medal for team. And straight after that, I was lured away to go work and sell ads at Surfing Magazine, which I would be
Bummer.
I would be there at Surfing Magazine for the next 10 years.
Wow. You know, it's funny too, because we're gonna jump ahead a little bit with, you know, your background in surfing. I don't know how many people know this, but I was reading about it, that you were instrumental in the skateboard industry.
A little bit.
You were on the team to help really put it into the Olympics.
I was part of the committee with, actually Tony Hawk was on that committee as well.
Yeah.
And they brought me in because in surfing, we're already ahead of the curve, and they needed somebody that was already had some in organizing the whole thing, and we had done that with surfing, and so they put me on that advisory council to help skateboarding get where it was going to go. And of course, both sports are now in the Olympics.
Yeah,
you know, and that's
so amazing.
Right.
I mean, growing up in the '60s, and all of us. I mean, we were all going to the perfect movie with Spicoli. Hey, dude, let's smoke a fat. I mean, people just related, that lifestyle to us. And you look at how far it's come.
Well, and another part of that skateboarding thing is my son Tosh became a pretty famous skateboarder.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean,
Still is. The
Yeah.
guy-
no, he's not skating much anymore. He's doing more surfing now. The damage from all the reconstruction surgeries and that from skateboarding, 2 ankle reconstructions, freaking broken elbows, you name it. But he was a big time skateboarder, X Games and all of that stuff, and a face of the Element brand in America. There was a point in time where he was making way more money than me, and he was a freaking teenager.
I know. I look back, and being with Tom Eberly and in his shop, he sponsored me. Lightning Bolt sponsored me, and I was small time. But just to get a couple bucks out of those guys was almost like pulling teeth. I mean, the most I would get would be a pair of board shorts and a couple T-shirts and stuff. It wasn't any money back then.
Oh no, mate! I was
now these kids are making
million. No, they're millionaires.
Yeah. So
They're millionaires. You can actually, if you're on the World Championship Tour, which is difficult to qualify for, but if you're on tour, you can lose every heat all year and make $100 grand.
Isn't that wild? That was a good. All right, we're going to keep going here because we got a lot to cover, and I'm really excited about this. So, not only is your career about surfing and all the things you've done in the surfing world, but you're somewhat of a movie star. So Rick and I were talking. He told me about a movie called Bustin' Down the Door. Until I went and I go, what are you talking about? So I went, oh yeah, I've seen that movie a million times. Now, what's cool about Bustin' Down the Door is, it was not just a movie, it was actually a movement. And what the reason I bring that up is because Momentum Generation, years later, 2018, Momentum Generation launched, and they're similar movies, just different. What do you call it?
Different era.
A different era, a different time frame,
Yeah.
different surfer from then. But let's talk about Busting Down the Door. And
Well, it's funny. I was on the phone with Sean today because next year is the 15th anniversary of Busting Down the Door.
Wow.
And when the whole impetus for Busting Down the Door was the winter of 1975, right before the pro surfing thing happened. But we were all busting down the door. We had a vision that pro surfing was going to happen. And that's what that movie's about.
Yeah.
And it won all sorts of awards for a documentary. But, Sean's going to do what it looks like he's going to do a tour of America with it next year in the 15th year. He and I just a couple of months ago went to the Florida Film Festival and did an encore presentation of it, and it was packed. He couldn't get in. And so he's going to organize to do a tour of the United States next year with it, maybe I think 6 locations to celebrate 15 years. But as you said, Momentum Generation is the next generation after us. It's the Slater, Machado, all that crew, Shane Dorian, that whole crew later was the next crew. And now those guys were making money because you were talking about the money. So like I'm in the
or lack of back then.
I was sponsored in Australia long before Quicksilver was in America, and the sponsorship was a box of free trunks a year, and you'd be put in the ads. So when McKnight got the rights with Hackman to have Quicksilver in America, which I helped set up with Greenie in Australia. They put me in the very first Quicksilver ad in America as me in Surfing Magazine. and I was still only getting free trunks.
Yeah. I know. That's about all you got, dude. I would be begging Tom, my entry fees, help me. I got to have gas to get up to Huntington Beach, like whatever. That's how it was.
And so soon after that whole thing, then is when we started the Bronzed Aussies, and we had a vision that we were going to create. It was a Harlem Globetrotters of surfing, and there'd always be new Bronzed Aussies. And that's how it started. It was Ian Cairns, Mark Warren, myself, and a journalist by the name of Mike Hurst. It was his idea. And we were deep into that. By then we had Shane Aran and Jimmy Banks, and, there were guys going to replace us. And that went into the 80s, but we ran out of money.
That's classic.
But we had branded stuff. We had branded surfboards, and we had licensees in Brazil and licensee in Japan, but we couldn't keep fueling it. If I knew what I knew now, we probably would have made it work, and Bronzed Aussies would probably still be a brand, because we envisioned what they had done, Jerry and Jack Shipley had done with Lightning Bolt, that we could do that with the Bronzed Aussies.
Wow. See, and that's why I want to bring it up. It's funny, when watching that movie, and I've seen it a few times, until Rick actually brought it to my attention, I forgot the title of it, but it's one of those movies you can watch over and over again. But I'm blown away at all the surfers in that movie, and how many big names were part of that whole movement. And I guess it raised up a stir over in the islands.
Yeah, well, as I said in Busting Down the Door, we were winning everything in the Hawaiian Islands. We were winning all the contests. We were winning all the money, and Ian in particular was quite vocal about that in the surf magazines. And the Hawaiians weren't taking so kindly to that.
Black Shore.
They were like
Eddie Rothman,
and we weren't humble about it, because that's the Australian way. Just look what happened in this Olympics just now. Australia had its best record in this Olympics that just happened in history. We finished fourth in the medal count.
Wow.
We're a freaking tiny little country compared to the countries that were behind us, and yet we dominate a couple of sports. Swimming is big for us.
Yeah.
Swimming is huge for us. And so, we've grown up with that. In that we're a small country, we love to brag about when we win something, and that didn't go over so well.
I have one of my detailing pros licensees over in Australia, and I've been fortunate enough to get over there quite a few times and surf. I've surfed this place called Picnic Bench. I think it was what they call it. It's a big right, and literally you take off on this wave, and I'm not kidding, Don, you'd ride till your legs turn jelly. You couldn't even ride it all the way. You had to kick in. Then what you did, you just paddle over to the beach, and then you walk back to the point and paddle out. You catch 3 or 4 waves that day, and you're done.
Oh, yeah.
You're finished.
That's how I grew up in Coolangatta. That's how the super bank is. You catch one wave, you ride it for as long as you can last, and then you walk back to the top of the point and jump in again.
Well, there's a hot rod culture over there too, big time hot rod culture over there, like Huntington Beach. And one of my trips over there, Darren's wife. Their terminology over there kind of throws you. First off, you can talk to these guys around here, no problem. But you go over there and get in a group of them talking. The slang is out of control. So you're sitting there trying to, what did he say? What do you mean? But we go to this. We're going to go to this hot rod show. I forget where it was. It was Kangaroo Flats. That was the name of this little town called Kangaroo.
I know what you're talking about.
And so we had to drive there, and we getting in the car. And Deirdre, Darren's wife, comes out and hands me a pillow and a blanket. I go, oh, thank you. What's this for? She goes, you're going to need it. And I go, I turn around, look at Darren, and here's what he says. When he says this, it ain't no joke. Where are we going? Oh, down the road a bit, mate. Don't worry about it. Down the road a bit, mate. And
She'd be right, mate. She'd be right.
Yeah. So we get in the car, we drive and drive. I fall asleep in the back seat, and I literally wake up, and when I open my eyes, it's a dark town. It's closed because it's little tiny. In a blink of an eye, you go into the town and you leave it. That's how small. And all I saw was this big sign, Kangaroo Flats. Are you fucking kidding me right now? Kangaroo Flats? So I sit up and I go, where are we, guys? I just woke up, and they're sitting there reading these directions. Turn left at the oak tree, like. Are you freaking kidding me? There's no hot rods out here. And when our headlights turned on this road, it turned a dirt road, and all of a sudden it was kangaroos everywhere. The headlights hit them, and all these kangaroos are bouncing all over the place. I'm like, what the heck? And we're driving down this road, and I go, you guys, we're going to a hot rod event. We're out in the kangaroo, we're out in the outback. Like, what the heck? And we get down this road, and I see a light, and I go, oh, well, there's a light. Maybe there's a building. And we get down there, and sure enough, here's this building. There must be 100 hot rods at this place. And I'm the guest speaker, right? So we go walking in, and this guy says, oh, man, you must be the bloke from America. Here, have a beer. I go, oh, shit, I can't right now. I'm going to be speaking. Oh, you better have 2 then, mate. That's how these guys are. They're classic anyway. So, the big question everybody had, I told a lot of people that we were going to have you on the show, PT. And so some people said, hey, I got some questions. Can I ask? I said, sure. Big Wednesday. You played a huge role in instrumental in being a part of that.
Well, it changed the course of my life.
Wow.
Because
so let's talk about it. Yeah. What was
because I was the world champ, and Milius had got the job and sold it to Warner Brothers. We're going to make this surfing movie, and he got Greg McGilvery to be second unit director. And so I'm in Australia. I'm the world champ, and I get called from Greg McGilvery, and he says, we're going to make this movie, and we want you to come over and be a double for Jan Michael Vincent, because I knew Jan well. I mean, Jan wants me to be the double because he loves my surfing style, and we'd been friends since that first year in '72 when I met him on the ranch. And so we're going to pay you $1,000 a week. Well, hell, that was a whole lot more money than we were making Big Pro Surfing, right? And so I go to the crew, that the other Bronze Aussies, and Mike Hurst, our manager, I'm going to go to America and work on this Hollywood film. And then you go, oh, everyone said, you can't do that, you got to defend your title. And I just went, I'm going to Hollywood. And so
I'm going to Hollywood.
And so I picked up my wife to be in Honolulu, and we came here, and then we went to El Salvador. That's where the movie starts being made. And we spend the next year making that movie. We spent 2 months in El Salvador. We spent 6 weeks on the ranch, and then we spent 2 months on the North Shore, and that over that year. So there was some breaks in between that, and so my relationship with Loyanne from Fountain Valley became pretty serious. She's on the road with me and everything, and that ultimately changed the course of my life. So I came to Huntington Beach for the first time in '77, even though I'd been down in San Diego in that world contest. I never came to Huntington Beach. We went straight by there, and I lived in the Topanga Canyon for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And then that's how I met Jan on the ranch. And then when we were coming now from Big Wednesday from El Salvador, and that's how I ended up my first time in Huntington Beach. And one of the best experiences of that is Loyanne. Of course, she's local, so she says, we're going to go downtown to the surf shop, and there's a sandwich shop in the back. So we go down there, and it's Jan's in the back of George's. And I have my first ever avocado tuna sandwich.
Oh, right.
Never
had one before.
With sprouts.
With sprouts.
Yeah. Sprouts was a big thing to say, yeah.
And some sort of seasoning that she sprinkles on it, right?
Yeah.
And so that was my first experience with an avocado tuna sandwich. And of course, after we get done with Big Wednesday, and she'd gone to Australia a couple of times, came back here, we would come here after the North Shore, because what caused that even more to happen is I got Ian Cairns the job in El Salvador when the double for Gary Busey wasn't working out, and Milius says, you know anybody that can surf that really good that kind of looks like Busey? I said, the perfect guy, it's just as nuts, Ian Cairns. And so I got Kanga the job, and he came over, and we were making a lot of money. So we bought a condo at Turtle Bay.
Oh, wow. Unreal.
Number 5, the one right where Lele's restaurant is, and it looks straight first hole on the golf course.
Unreal.
And what's even funnier in that part of the thing is, so we had money. We had enough money for the deposit and that, but we're going to need to have a loan. And Kaipo Guerrera's dad is the vice president of Hawaiian Hawaiian Savings, right there in Aliuba. We go in and we don't know Kopo, and we meet with Ants Guerrero's dad, and he lends us the friggin' money.
Unreal.
And so we buy this bitchin' condo, townhouse, split level, 2-bedroom, mezzanine, and so we would go there every winter for 4 months, right? And then the other 8 months we would rent it out through Turtle Bay, through Kuilima.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
the Kui Lima.
B&B it, yeah.
Yeah.
Del Webb.
Yeah,
right?
it was Del Webb in those days, and so that made us even more attached to the American, to America, and we eventually, trying to keep the Bronze Aussies going, sold it. I wish we had kept it.
God.
Oh,
But,
it'd be a fortune now.
Oh no, we paid $67,000.
Oh my, it makes you
right?
sick. Yeah.
And I think they're like $750,000, that particular one. And now it's like $750,000, but probably would have lost it in divorce anyway. So
Well,
water under the bridge.
let's go back to Big Wednesday real quick, because I thought you portrayed William Catt.
Yeah. So what happened?
So what happened there?
So I get here and I have to go meet John Milius at Warner Brothers, and I go up there, and John wants to meet me for the first time, and so we're in the lobby, and it happens to be the same day that it wasn't set up that way. William Catt comes in, and William Catt is still hasn't been given the part, but he's a good candidate for the part of Jack Barlow. And he comes in, and
Matt, Jack, and Leroy.
so he's sitting. We don't really. We're both sitting there, and Milius. It's my turn to be going to see John. John comes out and says, "PT." He said, and he looks and he sees William Catt and I, and we look like twin brothers. And he just said, "Jack Barlow." And so I walk in there, and so then that gets changed, and I become the double for Jack
William
Barlow,
Catt. Yeah,
William Catt.
Yeah.
And it turned out better anyway, because then Jay Riddle got the job of doubling, who was a friend of Jan's anyway, and a great surfer. And he looked physically really a lot like Jack.
Same build, same build.
Same facial features as well. And Kanga looked a lot like Busey too, which was good. The doubling was pretty good, pretty spot on for that film. And of course, William Catt and Jan were pretty good surfers.
Yeah, they are. I was just going to say,
No,
they
they're
both
pretty-
served. Now, Gary Busey,
No, mate. Busey had never surfed in his life, let alone paddle out in the waves. He was an Oklahoma linebacker. Well, besides the fact that most people don't know how talented a musician he was. He was.
Oh, yeah.
He was
Yeah, he
a
played
drummer.
with-
yeah, he played.
No,
he played,
Teddy Jack Eddy on Leon Russell's
Yeah,
albums,
yeah.
and freaking.
he played music.
Oh no, big time! And then he, of course, got nominated Academy Award for Buddy Holly.
So who trained him how to? Who was the teacher
you
who
wanna-
coached him how to surf?
We started paddling him out in El Salvador, and then he thought we were a bunch of wussies until we took him out at sunset, and he got caught inside.
Oh, there you
And
go.
he suddenly changed his tune. That we were a bunch of wussies.
Yeah. Only takes one wave.
So we had William Katz came to Huntington Beach, and we did an event at
Surf City Ale House.
Yeah.
at the Surf City Ale House, and we showed Big
Wednesday.
Wednesday, and they talked about it, and it was just cool to have him sitting there with all these people. We're like, whoa, this is like epic.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those movies. Karen and I always say, "I want to watch Big Wednesday again." You're going to watch it again. One of those kind of movies you just can't.
Well,
can't get enough of.
it is funny at times if I'm around and walking around. People will come up behind me and say lines from the movie, especially "Stay Casual, Barlow."
Oh, yeah.
which was Robert Englund who became Freddy Krueger, right?
Yeah.
"Stay Casual, Barlow."
Yeah. It's a great movie.
Yeah, there's some great scenes in that.
There's a couple questions, that people are asking me is, what's the story about the pink?
Well,
Obviously, you said you got your first pink
Great
board.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so 1969.
Let me say the reason I bring that up is because you'll see PT downstairs and he's got pink tennis shoes or a pink shirt, one or the other. It's a brand he's created. But go ahead. I just want to make sure everyone knows what we're talking
So
about.
69, towards the latter part of 69, I had got all my boards from Joe Larkin, who was the first surfboard builder in southern Queensland. and an old mate of my dad's from back in the days when my grandfather owned the hotel on the beach. And I'd had a few boards now, and I'd had a blue one, a yellow one, and an orange one. And I'm at breakfast at the breakfast table, Victorian family, 6 kids at the table, mum making breakfast. and I'm going, Mum, I'm going to get a new board. And I was going to get this 6.2, and then this is when I was starting to get okay. And I said to my mum, I goes, hey, Mum, I'm going to get a new board because I was an apprentice pastry cook at the pie shop. And so I had my own money, so I didn't have to worry about that part. And I said, Mum, I'm going to get a new board. And she said, you know what? I said, what color should I get it? And she goes, you know what, son? I think you should get this next board hot pink. That way they'll never miss you. Well, that was a pretty brave thing to do, to get a male get a hot pink surfboard in 1969. Yeah. So I get the pink. I go around to Joe Larkins and order it. I go around and Joe goes, you sure you want it pink? And he goes, that's a bit girlish, you know. And so they make the hot pink surfboards, and I come second in Queensland, which is like second in California. And I go, shit, this pink thing's working, I think. And so from then on, 90% of my boards for the rest of my career were pink. I think a couple of yellow ones and a couple of opaque white ones, but most of them were pink.
Pink, wow, interesting, great story. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, I think he's really supporting breast cancer movement."
No, that's the number one thing I get asked by the general public is, "You still ride pink surfboards?" That's the number one question I get asked.
Well, I liked it when Bushman gave you HB Till I Die in a pink shirt.
Oh yeah,
Scott.
That'd be cool. Good. And last but not least, you know, what does Huntington Beach mean to you? I asked this question of everybody. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you know, you and Don are like, there's not anybody you don't know. There's not an event you guys don't know what's happening. There's even the political side of things. There's nothing you don't know that's not happening. You guys, the two of you seem to know everything that's happening.
If him and I got paid for pro bono, it would be millionaires.
Oh yeah.
Right, mate. Yeah. Well, I've been here more than half my life. You know, like I said, I got here permanently in '79, so it's 45 years. And it feels like home.
Yeah.
I mean, I go home to Coolangatta, which I was just there for my youngest sister's 60th birthday. And, it's still my home from the point of view that's where I was born and raised. But Huntington Beach feels like home. I have 3 adult children born and raised here. I mean, my daughter was homecoming queen at Huntington Beach High School. Don't get more American than that, right?
Exactly.
And what's funny about that, though, the 2 older ones, Rana, the daughter, and one son, Jai, they now live in Australia. They immigrated and they live in my hometown. Wow. And they've left Dad behind. But I have in my head at some point, I'd love to go back home for the last years of my life, just because I did it the other day. It's so unreal when you're in Coolangatta to put your surf trunks on, not necessary to go surfing, but walk over the squeaky sand and dive in the ocean with no wetsuit, no grubby car park to frick, warm water, and you just come out feeling so refreshed and stuff. And like my father, because that's what my father did for the latter part of his life, I want to kind of feel to do that, you know. I want to be able to walk down to the beach and jump in the ocean, you know, even though it's not about the surfing, it's just that lifestyle at the end, whatever days you got left, you know.
It's the surfer's lifestyle.
I mean, you can't really do that here anymore unless, you know, you move somewhere like Central Coast or, you know, and even if you move up there, there's not a really good chance you're going to get a place that you can walk to the beach or afford to be able to walk to the beach.
I remember another one of my trips to Australia. I went to Sydney, and was Manly? Yeah, Manly Beach. And so my host Darren again, he says, hey, we're gonna, you can go surfing here. We got you a board and everything. We're all set up. And I go, oh, bitching. So we get down. There's like 3 to 4 foot, nice little left coming in. I was really stoked. But I'm standing there on the beach and I'm going, every one of those guys had a full suit. Right. And I'm like, what the hell? Is the water that cold? And I'm bummed because I'm watching nice Les peeling off. I'm like, this is really good surf. And this guy walks in and I said, hey, you're wearing a wetsuit. You know, is it that cold? And he goes, well, you don't have a suit, mate? And I go, no. He goes, well, paddle out, catch a wave, come in, run up and down the beach, paddle out, catch a wave. And I go, well, shit, I don't want to do that. Anyway, I just said, well, fuck it, I'm going to paddle out. So I just paddled out. The water was like 75 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
I was out there for about 2.5 hours. I was like, what are these guys wearing a wetsuit for?
Well, they even do that in my hometown now. I mean, in my hometown, Coolangatta, everyone's wearing full
Why,
suit
though?
all year round.
Yeah.
Like 2mm full suit.
Yeah, they're thin, but they're out there in these wets. I'm like, wow, am I going to freeze my butt off when I get out there? No, it was beautiful. Nice, great day.
But Huntington Beach is an unreal place to live. I think we take for granted how cool it. You know, I've been here since. Right, so there were no those single-story townhouses that go all the way now from Main Street to where I live at Sea Point, right?
Yeah.
The bowling alley.
Yeah.
Right, and you know that you can't even buy one, I don't think, for less than $3 million these days, right? Yeah. So it's changed dramatically since when I got here, and of course Main Street, you had the Golden Bear, and you had the old Jack's building. And now look what it's different.
George's Surf Shop.
Yeah, and the Main Street
Big difference.
There were like a dozen surf shops on Main Street when I was here in the 70s.
Oh, totally.
And what it's become is what I call now is the Times Square of surf retail. You got Jack's on one side, Surf and Sport on the other, and there's more retail business done there than anywhere in the world.
Wow.
In
the surf industry.
In the surf industry,
Yeah.
without question. Anyone that's in the surf industry on a worldwide basis, their first stop is to come downtown and walk through those two stores to get a temperature gauge on what the hell's going on at surf retail. And you know, it's pretty amazing when you look at it from that point of view. But the city's great. I mean, it's a freaking great place to live. We have the surf culture. We probably have more surf assets than any other place in the world.
There's nobody even close.
We got the Walk of Fame, and we got the Hall of Fame. We've got
Surf Museum.
We got the Surf Museum. We've got Greeks International Board Builders Hall of Fame.
Now you got the wall over at Pacific City.
You got the U.S. Open of Surfing. You know, arguably, even though it's not on the World Championship Tour, the biggest,
largest contest in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it is. It's a culture that is unreal here, and I can imagine leaving. You know, no matter what, it's just it's a community. Yeah, but it's also, like you said, it's home. That's how you feel.
Yeah, there's times where I think a certain amount of the people that live there take for granted how important the surf culture is to the town, and it gets overlooked at times, I think. But we'll see what happens. You know, we're hoping we get the Olympics here. If that happens, that from a worldwide point of view, will change everything. You know.
Yeah. No, that's all. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, PT, it's been great. What an honor having you on the show.
It's great, mate.
You know, this legendary. You know, you think about that. You know, growing up as a kid, watching you, you know, on the movies and watching, you know, flipping pages in a magazine with that art. You know, that friggin' classic art. You know,
I can't do that anymore. I might go into backlog.
Oh yeah, no shit. Yeah. Really. It's our knees, our shoulders, our wrists. You know, it's like just trying to get out in the water is a chore in itself.
I haven't been surfing for a while now. It's been a while. You lose, you know, when we're growing up, we get addicted to it, you know, and you think you're going to get a better ride tomorrow, and I've lost that addiction, and I've lost the pop-up, and all you do is get frustrated that, Jesus, I screwed that one up again, and I got to a point where I just didn't want to feel that frustration. And I've ridden enough waves in my life. My good mate says, PT, just put another picture of yourself on the wall.
Yeah. You know, but there's something to be said about this. You know, what PT's bringing, because there's a certain age where sometimes I've definitely slowed way down. It's just how it is. But, you know, a surfer isn't just being on a board and catching waves. A surfer, it's a lifestyle.
Oh yeah.
It's not a hobby. It's the way we live our life. It's how we look at life. Yeah.
Oh, I'm really good at mind surfing now. I'm walking out on the pier and going, I would have killed it on that
one.
Yeah.
I would have done this. Oh, dude, why didn't you drop back into the barrel, man?
Or reliving certain waves.
Right.
Like, there's waves I've gotten I'll never forget about.
Oh,
them,
yeah.
and
You're always gonna have them. Oh yeah,
Still
you
think
feel
about how it happened.
Yeah, you still feel it.
There's been a couple of days in Huntington that are memorable. North side on one particular time. The photographer, local Peter Brullier, was when I was still at a high level, early 80s. and there was a massive clean swell, as the 83 swell, and it's clean as you can even think, and the waves are breaking pretty much nearly at the end of the pier, and there's no one out. And he calls me up and he goes, PT, go for it. And I go, okay. I go out there, and my very first wave, my hair hadn't even got wet yet. It was still my favorite shot of the north side. It's probably 10 feet, and I'm doing a in the hook snap on the rail. And that day was incredible. A few guys came out later, and then we had this one other day that gets talked about all the time, Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
We had this incredible.
For whatever reason, the Super Bowl, during the day of the Super Bowl,
There's no one.
there's always surf.
There was no one out this morning, and it's offshore, like blowing offshore.
You mean this
like-
morning now? Yeah.
And it was a high tide, and right where the T is, where Tower Zero is, there was this unreal little right-hand sandbank, and myself, a guy called Jerry Boyd,
I know Jerry Boyd.
Pat Downey, and we go out there, and we were just getting barreled off our face. Well, as long as the tide stayed high for about 2 hours, it was an unbelievable day that day. I mean,
Wow.
we all reminisce about Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, this is a community.
Swell.
This is a community to die
North
for.
Swell.
man.
Yeah.
Like Bushman puts on the shirt, HB till we die. All right, guys. Well, PT, thank you so much.
Thanks
It's
for
been
having
great.
me, boys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right
It's
on,
a
PT.
wonderful thing to be able to do it. And that's PT, you guys. I'm Mel Craig,
I'm Don Ramsey.
and we'll see you later. See you on the beach.